Story 1. This is minor compared to most cases mentioned. If I have to cancel an appointment less than 24 hours before, I am automatically charged a fine, regardless of the reason. It could be a medical emergency, car troubles, or similar issues. It does not matter. If an appointment is canceled on my behalf for any reason 24 hours or less before the appointment, there are absolutely no repercussions for the company or individual. Story 2. Employers ask you to stay overtime for hours, and it is not a big deal. But if you are late by even 10 minutes, you receive a formal warning and a reprimand. Story 3. Interacting with the government. If you make a mistake, that is your problem. If they make a mistake, that is your problem too. Story 4. Making fun of me versus making fun of them. For some reason, it always hurts them more. Edit. Thank you for the award, kind strangers. Story 5. They do not want to give an existing employee a raise but are perfectly fine hiring someone new and paying them more from the start than the raise would have been. Story 6. Elites flying around the world on private jets but lecture us ordinary people to drink from paper straws to fight climate change. Story 7. Us versus them, where we are always right and they are always wrong. This is the single cognitive fallacy responsible for more destruction, hate, chaos, and misery than any other. Story 8. My father-in-law and many others saw a very expensive car with a Ukrainian license plate. He said, "I wanted to tell the driver to leave Germany, get a gun, and defend Ukraine instead of living on welfare here. Then I asked him if Germany was attacked by Russia and his son, my brother-in-law, had the possibility to flee to a safe country, would he force him to stay and fight? He was silent after that question." Story 9. My doctor's office imposes a $25 surcharge if you are more than 15 minutes late. The doctor is regularly more than 30 minutes late, but I cannot charge them $25. Story 10. I dislike how, as a woman, if I sleep with many men, I am considered promiscuous. However, if a man does the same, he is labeled differently. Story 11. I genuinely hate the trope of becoming a bigger person. When something happens, like when someone has hurt you, stolen from you, or betrayed you, why is it that all of a sudden we are supposed to be the bigger person and forgive? Story 12. Well, what I see sometimes is that people want respect, but they do not show respect. In my opinion, respect goes both ways. Story 13. Employers in at-will states expect a 2-week notice. The 2-week notice expectation became popular during a time when bosses were also expected to pay you for the next 2 weeks if you were fired. In an era where bosses will fire you on the spot for nearly anything, including giving your 2 weeks notice and then not pay you, the fact that they still expect a 2-week notice is ironic. Story 14. People tell introverts to speak up and be louder, but it is considered rude to tell extroverts to be quieter. Story 15. I really dislike how men are sometimes seen as caregivers in public, such as a man playing with his child in the park or, God forbid, becoming a kindergarten teacher. Story 16. We ease our pets' suffering with euthanasia. We should be able to do the same for our human loved ones and ourselves in a controlled and guaranteed manner in the United Kingdom. Story 17. This situation applies both ways. Men are upset about women having standards for physical attractiveness when they themselves have standards. Women are upset about men having standards for physical attractiveness when they themselves have standards. Story 18. It is often considered ruder to point out rude or bad behavior, so we just let it go rather than say something. Examples include people who interrupt, people who talk at length without pause, people who show up late, and people who do something poorly. Story 19. When your party member does it, it's fine. When the other does it, it's not. I don't care who you voted or would have voted for. Doing things like this is very foolish. Story 20. Autism is often seen as something funny and quirky until the inconvenient signs start to show or someone is not conventionally attractive. My ex said her favorite trait was being autistic until I had a meltdown because I was late to our date due to a train delay. Story 21. Next to a school near where I live, there is a stadium for the public. It has a 400-meter running track, and inside there is an area for basketball and soccer, which has not been renovated since it was built during Soviet times. It is common for people to walk laps and push their baby carriages. I go jogging, running, and sprinting there. The number of women pushing their baby carriages who make random comments is absurd. Comments range from calling me lazy because I am out of breath after 12 minutes of jogging, to complimenting my body, even though I am a man. My favorite is, "Boy, if you did not smoke, you would not be out of breath." I do not smoke. She appeared to be about 30 years old with a pregnant stomach, while I am in my early 20s. The next time I passed her and her friend, who was about the same age, they started loudly discussing how men these days are out of breath after a few minutes of jogging and how embarrassing it is. If I said that to any woman doing the same thing, I would be called a pervert. Story 22. Girls kiss other girls and nobody bats an eye, but when I kiss my friends goodnight, society calls me gay. Story 23. Whenever my husband experiences a medical issue, the doctor listens to him intently and suggests a treatment plan. When I experience a medical issue, the doctor explains that many young women are stressed and nervous and sends me home. Story 24. My dog defecates in someone's yard and I am expected to clean it up. However, when I defecate in someone's yard, my dog does nothing except stare at me. Lazy dog. Story 25. All of them, especially when you are required to deal with them. One person expecting you to be kind while not being kind is annoying, but just stop interacting with them. Bosses expecting you to be perfect in all communications while they send rude, talk-to-text emails. Teachers using artificial intelligence while prohibiting students from using artificial intelligence. Government requiring all of your documents to be on time and perfect while they make mistakes constantly. That is the worst. Story 26. There are definitely worse double standards, but one that I always wonder about is this. Why is it that women in professional kitchens are so looked down upon in that industry? It is getting better, at least. Is it because it is considered men's work? Even if we accept that misogyny, please explain why women are expected to do all of the household cooking traditionally. Why is cooking a woman's job until she gets paid for it? I know why, because some do not want to pay women for anything and think they should be home caring for their children while having them every year. It is still an extremely strange double standard to me because I have seen women in kitchens treated worse than men in kitchens, even in the most progressive settings imaginable. Story 27. Not wanting children. If a man does not want children, he is simply living the life he chooses. If a woman does not want children, it is often viewed as unnatural and makes her less of a woman. This attitude is unfair, and people rarely respect a woman's right to choose. Story 28. Women cannot wear too much makeup, but must also wake up with the clearest skin on earth. Cherry red lips, pink cheeks, and curled eyelashes. Also, men are not expected to shave body hair, but women are. Story 29. The double standards the media and the public hold Republicans to versus Democrats. If Barack Obama were a convicted felon with 5 children by 3 women, had an affair with a porn star, was friends with Kanye West, constantly posted impulsively on social media, promoted unhinged conspiracy theories, had a personal cryptocurrency that he accepted bribes with, received a $400 million jet from the Qataris, incited riots against government buildings, said John McCain is only a war hero because he was captured, and routinely used profanity in public, needless to say he would never have had a chance of being president. Story 30. People who wake up and work early are considered proactive, whereas people who work and go to sleep late are considered lazy. I woke up at noon because I worked all night, while you were watching Netflix and sleeping. Story 31. Government officials who always act like very important persons make themselves hard to approach. Imagine they are public servants but are really difficult to reach except during election campaigns. Story 32. Any healthcare appointments that you miss will often result in receiving multiple letters and warnings. However, you may arrive at a dentist or hospital only to find out that your appointment was canceled at the last minute. Story 33. Men can take their shirts off in the summer when it gets hot outside, but women cannot because of breasts. Story 34. I think everyone should be allowed to defend themselves from anyone. If a man assaults a woman physically or sexually and the woman defends herself, she is praised. If a woman assaults a man in the same way and the man defends himself, he is considered wrong. That is not right. Everyone should have the right to defend themselves. Story 35. When a small person attacks a bigger person, it is seen as brave, but when a big person defends himself, he is seen as violent. I do not start fights or think about hurting people. Many times in my life, I have been challenged by people who felt threatened by my mere presence. I am speaking from elementary school to now, at 27 years old. Story 36. When a man has a messy apartment, it is considered bachelor life. But when my place is not perfect, I am suddenly unladylike. I work 60 hours a week, Karen. My dishes can wait. Story 37. Male and female differences working in education. The amount of suspicion you get as a male teacher for no reason other than being male is overwhelming. It is discouraging, unfair, and extremely damaging in the long term if you encounter rumors about yourself, even if you are completely innocent. Everyone hurries to protect the students, but they never protect the teachers. Story 38. I am a female, but I hate how when women are abused, it is considered a crime. However, if men are abused, it is seen as funny or justified. How is that fair? Abuse is abuse. It is not acceptable in any situation. I also dislike how it is overlooked when a man abandons a child, but if a woman does it, she is heavily shamed. No parent should abandon their child. Story 39. When some straight men pretty much dry hump their friends, slap other men's asses, and so on, but as soon as a gay man so much as looks at one, they say, "I'm not gay." Story 40. Political double standards. If you let your political allies get away with things you scrutinize your political opponents for, you instantly lose my respect. Story 41. I really don't like the "I beat my boyfriend" jokes I see online. I don't care if it's a joke. That is not funny, no matter which gender it is directed at. I know men in my life who have actually been physically abused by their partners. Not cool. Story 42. Religion. They use logic all day, every day, but the moment you try to apply it to their favorite religion, suddenly they hesitate and avoid the question. Story 43. A man says he does not want children, and society responds, "Okay, that is cool." A woman says she does not want children, and society says, "Oh, you will change your mind. Just wait and see." Story 44. One double standard I hate is how being assertive is seen as leadership in men but bossy or difficult in women. Same behavior, totally different judgment. Story 45. People who have no problem with drinking alcohol, yet look down on people who use cannabis. It's like, really? Really? Oh, I can't stand it. Laugh out loud. Story 46. People seem to be unaware that women can be involuntarily celibate. Sure, men might be more common and more vocal, but there are definitely involuntarily celibate women out there. Story 47. When a person works a soul-crushing corporate job they hate, they are seen as a responsible adult. But when a person pursues their art, works part-time to pay the bills, and is genuinely happy but not wealthy, they are often seen as an irresponsible dreamer who needs to get a real job. We seem to value predictable misery over passionate uncertainty. Story 48. My hair is fine when it is on my body, but God forbid it ends up in the bathtub. Then it is disgusting. Story 49. Mother takes care of a child normal and expected. Father takes care of a child best dad ever. I am the father and I feel uncomfortable receiving compliments for doing something normal. Story 50. The staggering level of hypocrisy that many Christians espouse is notable. They consider their third marriages or divorces acceptable and holy, yet view my decades-long relationship and same-sex marriage as sinful. Story 51. Complaining about the lack of freedom to harass others for their freedom to not behave in a Christian way. Story 52. Jokes about sexual assault are unacceptable. Sexual assault is absolutely horrible, no matter who the victim is. You cannot express sympathy and support for victims of sexual assault and then joke about sexual assault in prison shortly afterward. Sexual assault is always unacceptable. Story 53. You are not supposed to body shame, but it is still acceptable to make fun of someone for being short, which is something they have no control over. Story 54. Gender standards for children. It is usually acceptable for girls to wear and play with boys' toys, but it is often frowned upon if a little boy wants a doll to love. Story 55. When the employer asks about a gap in your resume, but avoids explaining why the previous person in the role left. Story 56. Growing up, I was told that I should take other people's thoughts and feelings into consideration. Yet, no one has to do the same for me. Story 57. Girls and women are held to a much higher standard in terms of expectations than boys and men, especially in school. When I was in school, boys were praised for doing the bare minimum both in work and behavior. The boys would often win Star of the Week for going one day without misbehaving, whereas it was simply expected that the girls would behave well at all times. I was a tomboy and had a somewhat boyish sense of humor. I got in trouble for things that the boys did regularly with no consequences. For example, when I was about 13, I waved my hockey stick pretending it was a penis, and I was screamed at and put in detention, whereas the boys did similar things all the time and the teachers just laughed. I work in a school now and make a point of holding both genders to the same standard and giving equal praise, rather than expecting the girls to behave perfectly and work hard at all times while the boys do not have to. Story 58. Business wear for men versus women in summer. Women can wear skirts or dresses and open-toed shoes, even sandals. A man wearing the equivalent of shorts and sandals to the office would be shamed. Story 59. Freedom of speech gives you the right to express your opinions, even if they are offensive. However, it also gives me the right to criticize those opinions. It is not a protection from accountability. Story 60. Religious people saying, "I don't want insert here," agenda being imposed on me, while imposing their own agenda on others. Story 61. Me just existing is seen as imposing my lifestyle on people, grooming children, and so on. Meanwhile, conservatives who shout slurs at me on the street actually groom their children and force their lifestyles on everyone are considered good old boys, proud patriots, or at worst, simply people who happen to have a different opinion. Story 62. Religious people have the right to live a religious life, but non-religious people also have the right to live a life free of religion. Story 63. Banks. If I make a mistake, I pay a $45 non-sufficient funds charge and receive calls every hour until the payment is made and cleared. When the bank makes a mistake, it takes 5 to 7 business days to resolve, accompanied by a lecture on how I can manage my money better. Story 64. Children must respect their parents, but the parents may say and do disrespectful things, and the child has to accept it. Story 65. Women are chastised for aging, while men are glorified for aging like a fine wine. Women are constantly asked, "So when do you plan on having children?" But no one asks those questions to a man. Story 66. Consenting adults receiving gender-affirming care are changing their bodies from the way God created them. This statement often comes from middle-aged white people with a facelift, spray tan, pierced ears, breast enhancements, bleached hair, braces, a hip replacement, glasses, lip filler, and similar modifications. Story 67. Having pride in your general race, not country or cultural background, is acceptable for everyone except white people. For clarification, I am not a supremacist. I think it is unwise to be proud of your genetics because you did not do anything to earn them. You were simply born. Story 68. In Singapore, the Chinese dislike the racism they face in Western countries. However, many of them exhibit racial prejudice towards Indians in Singapore. Story 69. When being quiet is mysterious for men but rude for women, it feels like we are all part of some strange social role-playing game. Story 70. A man can be blunt, confident, and career-focused, and people respect him for it. But when a woman acts the same way, she is suddenly intimidating, cold, or unpleasant. Why is it only acceptable to be driven if you are a man? Story 71. Executives calling into team meetings from their home office while the rest of US were required to be in the office 5 days a week. I can accept being back in the office if necessary. But leadership flaunting the fact that company values and rules do not apply to them really frustrates me. I think my father finally understands why so many people are burned out on office jobs after I explained this to him. When I told him the executives were still largely working from home, he looked at me as if I had said something unbelievable. He had trouble believing that an organization could function that way. He said, "So wait, why did they send you all back to the office if they are not in the building?" It was like, "Yes, now you see why we are disillusioned." Story 72. People are more comfortable seeing a mother alone with her children in public than seeing a father alone with his children in public. Maybe that only happens in small towns now, but it happened to my husband a couple of times when we lived in a small town. He had to have staff members from our local grocery store intervene before two different people left him alone in separate instances. Meanwhile, I had no issues whenever I was alone with our son in public. Story 73. When someone disrespects you and you snap at them, now you are the bad person because you got upset. Leave people alone. They have every right to say whatever they want if you have decided not to respect them. They are not wrong for losing their temper with you when you have had ample warning. If you provoke someone, expect consequences. Stop acting like a victim. Story 74. I am a female farm owner. I often get ignored as salespeople try to pitch to my partner, who is male, even when I am the one calling and asking questions. Sometimes I feel frustrated and walk away, and then the agent has to chase after me because my partner follows me and will not make a deal unless I approve it. So, the agent follows my partner, who is following me. Story 75. Do not be promiscuous or homosexual, but also you are not allowed to be asexual. Masks infringe on freedoms unless the Immigration and Customs Enforcement wear them. This is a country of freedom, but being who you want to be is delusion and does not count. Story 76. Police officers speeding and breaking other traffic laws without their emergency lights on. Christians complaining about LGBTQ+ people while still eating shellfish and pork or ignoring other parts of Leviticus without considering their hypocrisy. Claiming to be a law and order president of the United States, especially regarding immigration, but then pardoning rioters who recklessly tried to overthrow Congress. Story 77. When my wife had a miscarriage, our families supported her. They made sure they were there for her. Her parents even bought her a puppy. No one reached out to me beyond the initial expression of sympathy. I had to deal with it internally. Story 78. When you point out an issue affecting men, there is always someone who says that women have it worse or that it is not a big deal. God forbid you do the same about an issue affecting women. Story 79. Right-wingers advocating for personal freedom while at the same time banning books to protect the children. Bullshit. Story 80. If a woman becomes pregnant, she must keep the child, or she is considered a murderer. However, if a man causes a woman to become pregnant and he does not want her to keep the child, he should have the right to request that she terminate the pregnancy or at least relinquish his parental rights because he should not have to support a child he does not want. We would not want to burden a man with a child he is not prepared to raise, but a woman is expected to continue any and all pregnancies, or the government will intervene. Story 81. Both the right and the left hate men who show any emotion other than gratitude. No matter how bad your situation is, it is your fault, so just pull yourself up by the bootstraps and stop whining. Story 82. Self-defense. As a woman, I find it sad that many men are expected to just sit there and endure abuse because men cannot hit women. Story 83. Make America Great Again with Donald Trump. If a member of the Democratic Party did 1/20th of the things he has done, they would be widely criticized. It is extremely wrong and not a matter to joke about. Story 84. American men expect women to be plucked, waxed, and groomed meticulously, while many of them are unkempt, wearing saggy, baggy clothes, growing neckbeards, and barely grooming themselves. Story 85. We put dangerous animals down, but we keep dangerous humans alive. Edit. Figures that Reddit would remove my reply. This site has gone to ruin. Story 86. Military officers have liberty incidents that get overlooked, while enlisted personnel face the Uniform Code of Military Justice for similar actions. I spent 12 years enlisted and 13 years commissioned and witnessed too many instances of this. Story 87. UK policing. If you are wealthy, connected, a politician, or of Middle Eastern background, you can get away with child abuse and child grooming. This is because the police are afraid of upsetting their corrupt superiors or being accused of racism. It is no wonder that people dislike the police. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.